It is the news many had anticipated and hoped for. The results are in, and Bangladesh has a new Prime Minister. Not long ago, a political fugitive, Tarique Rahman, will now lead the country. Dhaka's streets were quiet today as his party urged supporters to refrain from celebration to avoid potential chaos. But that didn't stop some from reveling in the moment.
I strongly believe that we victory for our democracy.
I
hope this government will do something good for us, something better for us.
The 60-year-old has promised to end entrenched corruption and take the country onto a new path. This election came 18 months after the Gen Z uprising, which toppled an increasingly authoritarian Sheikh Hasina, forcing her to flee to neighbouring India. In what was a test of Bangladesh's democracy after years of political turmoil, observers acknowledge there has been a noticeable absence on the ballot box of the Awami League. The ousted leader's party was banned from standing. But that hasn't stopped early assessments from praising the democratic process.
No incidents of any major nature have been reported. There's been no disruption of the process. It's all gone well, and I think even better than most people expected. The manner in which the election has been conducted has been commendable.
After the polls had closed yesterday, the Awami League told ITV News that they would not accept the findings of any of the some 400 election observers allowed into Bangladesh.
You have a limited number of foreign observers in the country who are escorted by the regime. These foreign observers are not allowed to travel freely.
We put that allegation to the Commonwealth Observation Team.
The idea that somehow or other we were spoon-fed and taken along to places is not borne out by the facts. It's not true.
For the first time ever, the wide-ranging Bangladeshi diaspora participated in this election with more than 770,000 out-of-country voters registered. A big part of that diaspora is based in the UK, the country where Bangladesh's new Prime Minister spent 17 years in self-imposed political exile. For this British Bangladeshi MP, time here may have done him some good.
Maybe some of what's been going on in the UK and our ways of doing things has rubbed off on him. I would like to think that the UK can help with democracy building, because within this election there was also bundled in a referendum that looked at things like term limits, of having a bicameral parliament with 2 chambers.
Prayer might be needed in what has been described as an in-tray from hell. Many challenges certainly still lie ahead for the new Prime Minister and this relatively young country. But for now at least, Bangladesh is enjoying some change. Mahathir Pasha, News at 10.
Sajid, Wazeb, thank you very much indeed for the time today. We appreciate it. Is this a moment to be celebrated?
Today's election was a complete sham. You've had the largest party and all progressive parties barred from elections. You've had essentially a stage-managed election to give Jamaat-e-Islam, the largest Islamist party, a far outsized influence in parliament than they would based on their popular support. And this is not going to be sustainable. This is going to lead to more instability in the future. How can you call an election where one of the 2 major political parties in the country are banned? I mean, this is the equivalent of, in the UK, if either the Tories or the Liberals were banned, that you cannot call that a free and fair election in any way. This is unprecedented, where a political party has been banned by a diktat from an unelected regime.
Wasn't the Jamaat-e-Islami Party banned when your government was in power? It can't be that unprecedented, can it?
No, because they were banned because of a court ruling. They were they were banned from participating because of a court ruling from an independent group, not from the government, that ruled, and the courts ruled that Jamaat's constitution, which recognizes Sharia law above the Constitution of Bangladesh, conflicted with our constitution. All Jamaat had to do was change their constitution and they could run again. There was no ban from the government on them.
Okay, well, look, you've described this election as a sham in your sort of social media posts. But why should anyone take your assessment of elections seriously when your party was widely criticised for vote rigging the last 3 times Bangladesh had an election?
That's not exactly true, because the last 3 times, the first time and the third time, the opposition boycotted. But yeah, second time around, if you look at the opinion polls, if you look at our opinion polls leading up to the elections, the Americans did polling, and all the polls showed that our party would have a landslide majority. It was going to be a landslide for the Awami League. Unfortunately, the administration, some people in the administration still took it upon themselves to commit irregularities. Those should have been investigated. They weren't, but overall, it wouldn't have affected the result.
Okay, point taken. Point taken, Mr. Wazir. But in 2014, 2018, and the 2024 elections, there were accusations of crackdowns on opposition, ballot box stuffing. Surely the Awami League doesn't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to talking about proper elections.
The climate is very different. Again, fundamental difference. Awami League never banned anybody. In the 2014 elections, there wasn't a crackdown until our opposition started arson attacks on public transportation. I don't know if you remember, but BBC and the Western media, world media covered it very well. Hundreds of people were burned alive in buses in arson attacks by the opposition because they chose to boycott the elections.
Okay.
So yes.
You're effectively insisting this is a sham vote, the vote was fixed, but don't you think it's sensible for us to wait for the experts to make their assessment? Some 394 international observers and around 200 foreign journalists are covering this election according to the Bangladesh Election Commission. Shouldn't we wait and see what they have to say?
Well, you're asking me now before they've given their opinion, but here's the fundamental difference. The fact that is unprecedented and undeniable. The largest political party in the country has been banned from elections. The third largest party has not been officially banned, but many of their leaders are behind bars. Their offices have been burned down. Their leaders' homes have been burned down. And they have not really been allowed to campaign, hold public rallies, hold public meetings, even hold a press conference. So how can anyone call that a free and fair election?
Point taken, but if these international observers and foreign journalists do come back and in their assessment they say this was a free and fair election, are you going to accept that?
No, you cannot accept. I mean, again, you have a limited number of foreign observers in the country who are escorted by the regime because, again, these foreign observers are not allowed to travel freely in the country, and frankly, it's not even safe. The law and order situation is that bad. So how much have these foreign observers been really allowed to observe? But again, I will reserve my judgment until they make their statements.
Okay.
But the fundamental point is, if you've banned either the Democrats or the Republicans in the US, can you in any way call that election free and fair?
Understood. As you say, the Awami League is not on the ballot this time. But arguably there is a reason for it, right? Do you really think, given what's happened over the past 15 years, accusations of corruption, kidnappings, disappearances, cracking down on dissent, can you accept that this is in part a problem of the Awami League's own making?
No, because again, the same accusations were leveled against the BNP when they were in power, yet they're being celebrated.
I want to move on now to the Gen Z revolution or the quota movement, as it was labelled. I've seen you defend your mother, obviously the former leader of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina's record vehemently. But do you accept that there were failings during the protests which ultimately led to her overthrow?
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, the protests started peacefully. They had a legitimate demand. And the sad fact here is that our government had actually reduced the quotas in 2018. The quotas weren't reinstated by the government. They were reinstated by the courts based on a lawsuit of the families that used to benefit from the quotas. And that's when the protests started. And our government filed an appeal and appealed it in the courts. However, our government completely failed to communicate this. They completely failed to sit down with the student protesters. And the Islamists, the Jamaat-e-Islam and their militant wing saw this as an opportunity to overthrow the government. They started the violence, and then the protests turned violent. And again, our government mishandled it. It should never have gone that far.
There was, of course, there was a significant crackdown under your mother's administration. 1,400 people, the UN estimates, were killed during this period. You acknowledge there were some errors here. Will you apologise to the families and the loved ones of those who died?
Two issues here. First of all, the UN number, I'm glad you brought that up. It covers the period from July 15th until August 15th. Our government fell on August 5th. Yet the UN report still blames the continued killings on our government. I mean, how is that possible? It boggles the mind since you quote this UN report. Also included in that number are police officers. There were hundreds of police officers killed, and during the protests themselves, hundreds of our activists killed. So how can you blame the killing? I mean, any deaths are regrettable. But how can you blame the killings of police officers and the killings of government activists on the government itself? And in terms of the apology, the very first thing my mother did, she met with the families of the victims. She offered them condolences. She offered them justice. She promised them justice. And she had formed a judicial committee to investigate all the killings.
Just to be clear, you've accepted some mistakes were made under your mother's government, but you are unwilling to take any responsibility for the 1,400 or any of the 1,400 that were killed during the Gen Z revolution.
No, actually, we take full responsibility for the several hundred that were killed, not 1,400, because half of those were police and our party activists. So those several hundred deaths, I don't know what the exact number is, but yes, of course it's regrettable. We never wanted that. Every single death is regrettable. We never wanted anyone to die. My mother never ordered lethal force against anyone other than people attacking police, attacking other people. What else is a government supposed to do? It's a government's job to protect lives. Unfortunately, there were militants involved attacking the police.
But I mean, some of the victims, according to the UN's children agency, UNICEF, include children. 32 children apparently died during the protests. I mean, surely you can issue an apology to the family of those people.
We have. My mother apologized to them immediately during the protest, before our government fell. We met with them. My mother met with them.
But what about the crackdown of protesters? I mean, we heard the leaked audio recordings of your mother appearing to order the killing of the protesters. Surely more deaths came because of the crackdown, the heavy-handed nature of the response from the authorities.
You should listen to the recordings, the full recordings of what BBC and Al Jazeera and what was broadcast internationally was a little snippet taken out of context. The full recording, she clearly states, arrest violent protesters, lethal force is authorized to protect lives and property. There are two conversations that were broadcast and presented in the courts in Bangladesh, one with the IGP of police and two with the mayor of Dhaka. In the conversation, they're talking about militants attacking police stations. That is where lethal force was authorized. Lethal force was never authorized against protesters. But the international media only broadcast a snippet of that conversation. I have put the full recordings up on my website. The Awami League has it on its website. You are welcome to go listen to it.
Okay, let's talk about basically your return to Bangladesh, or your family's return to Bangladesh. Your mother was tried in absentia and sentenced to death by a court in Bangladesh for her crackdown on the protests in the summer of 2024. Are you concerned about what might lie ahead for her if she is ever to return to Bangladesh?
No, because I think given how sham of an election this was, this will never be accepted by at least half the population. And the one thing that is undeniable is that the 16 years of the Awami League's government, you also had the best economic development in Bangladesh's history, the most infrastructure development, the most stability. You had the best law and order situation, and you had a complete stop to all terrorist activity. And I think within a very short time, people are going to say, well, despite all its shortcomings, the Awami League was the best government we had.
These terrorists that you refer to, are you basically referring to the Jamaat-e-Islami party?
No, not just Jamaat-e-Islami. In the past year and a half, one of the first things that the Yunus regime did, they released all convicted terrorists from prison, the ones that our government had arrested and convicted.
The Awami League has repeatedly in the past referred to the Jamaat-e-Islami party or the Jamaat-e-Islami adherents as terrorists. But I mean, they're in the polls right now, they're basically the biggest challenger to the BNP. They could take up a lot of seats in the Bangladeshi parliament right now. Is this resurgence of the Jamaat-e-Islami party in part due to them being quashed under your mother's administration?
It's really easy to resurge again when you've got your entire opposition, when you're playing on an empty field with no opponent. That is what's happening. Jamaat on its own is not a very popular party in Bangladesh. During our time, almost every terrorist we arrested had links to Jamaat. That is why we referred to Jamaat as a terrorist organization. And Jamaat's response always would be, oh, they used to be a member of our party, they're not anymore.
Returning back to the point of you going to Bangladesh, you yourself have also been sentenced to 5 years in jail. When will you next return to Bangladesh?
I don't live in Bangladesh. I've spent a total of my seven years of my entire life in Bangladesh. I've been settled in the US for over 30 years.
You have no intention of going to Bangladesh?
Oh, I will go back at some point. I mean, you look at what's happened. You look at Tarique Rahman. He was convicted on evidence by the FBI. Now he's likely to be prime minister. So these things don't last forever.
Are you saying you will be going back to perhaps one day to throw your hat into the ring to be prime minister yourself?
No, I've never had political ambition. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is Bangladesh is, the justice system in Bangladesh has essentially collapsed. All convictions of corruption in the past, of terrorism, they've all been thrown out, terrorists released. None of this is going to last. None of this is sustainable. And yes, at some point, I will be able to go back to Bangladesh.
And someone else in your family who says something similar is Tulip Siddique, your cousin.
Right.
The fact of the matter is what's happening in Bangladesh under the interim government has had very real consequences for your family. She was effectively forced to resign after growing pressure over an anti-corruption investigation. She resigned as Treasury Minister. Do you think it was right for her to resign?
She resigned to avoid embarrassment to the British government. That is the only reason. The UK watchdog investigated her. They cleared her of any wrongdoings. They've recognized that what's happening in Bangladesh, there is no due process whatsoever. The trials against my family and my mother were completed in a month and a half.
And your cousin
to appoint our own attorneys.
Sure, and your cousin, Tulip, has always insisted this was nothing more than a politically motivated smear campaign. But then why did she resign?
That was, again, to avoid embarrassment because it was becoming such a controversial issue.
Sure, but do you think that's fair? Is it fair that she had to resign when she did nothing wrong, apparently?
No, of course not. It's not fair. I don't think it's fair at all.
Are you upset, therefore, with the British Prime Minister? Some accused him of not sticking up for his friend.
The British Prime Minister didn't ask her to resign. As my understanding is, she chose to resign to avoid controversy.
Sure, but the Prime Minister's Standards Advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, said he'd not identified evidence of improprieties in this case, and yet she still resigned. No. The Prime Minister was criticised at the time for failing to protect someone who was described as his close friend. So do you think the British Prime Minister failed in this case? Should he have defended Tulip better if she did nothing wrong?
I cannot comment on British politics, unfortunately.
Okay. Let's talk about now the future of Bangladesh. Will your mother ever be returning to Bangladesh? She's obviously in political exile in neighbouring India. The current administration has repeatedly requested that India extradite her. Will Sheikh Hasina ever return to Bangladesh?
I have no doubt she will return someday. She has always wanted to retire. She's been wanting to retire for a long time. And she's lived almost her entire life in Bangladesh. That's where she's comfortable. And at some point she will.
Is it safe for her to return?
Right now, no. Not at all.
And look, on a personal level, how does that make you feel? This is your mother, you're a son. She is someone who's, elderly. Are you worried about her? Are you concerned about her?
Right now, no. She is in the safest place in the world that she can be. The Indian government is providing her full security, and India has due process. The trials in Bangladesh do not anywhere near meet that standard. So I'm not concerned about her safety, and I'm actually glad that she is where she is. I feel bad for her. I feel terrible for her that she's now having to live outside of her country, which is something she never wants to do. She never wanted to do. We've been in exile before, my family, after the coup of 1975, when my entire family was murdered. The only reason I'm here talking to you is because we happened to be out of the country at the time the coup happened. But again, back then too, most Awami League leaders were murdered in the coup of 1975. And look, the Awami League came back. The Awami League is the oldest political party in Bangladesh. The Awami League led the independence movement. The Awami League led an economic resurgence that my mother's time is going to be remembered in history as the best economic and security and stable time in Bangladesh's history. I can guarantee you that.
Mr. Wazir, I think you and I are both aware of the deep-rooted connection the Awami League has to Bangladesh. I mean, in many ways, the party predates the existence of the country itself. And as you say, no doubt, it perhaps does have a future in the country. But what does that future look like? Surely it's time for some major reform now. Fresh blood, perhaps?
Reform is not a one-time process. Reform is a continuous, ongoing process. And the Awami League is a democratic party. Yes, the Awami League will get its own leadership. They will pick its own leadership. Right now, that's not even feasible. We're not even allowed to speak to anyone. We're not allowed to hold a party meeting. We're not allowed to hold a press conference. Our offices have been burned down. Anyone who even tries to talk to diplomats faces fear of arrest. So right now, the situation at this point, there is absolutely nothing for the Awami League to do, but the situation will change. It always does.
The interim government would argue, obviously, this is justice being done for the previous 15 years, where there have been various accusations levelled against the Awami League and Awami League operatives. You have said repeatedly that you don't think your mother is to blame for the atrocities that took place around August 2024. So in your view, therefore, what does justice look like then? Who should be held to account for what happened?
Well, first of all, if we're talking about justice, then in that case, if you think that indemnifying all killings by protesters, passing legal indemnification and legal protection for killings of police officers and government activists is legal, then the whole issue of justice for whatever might have happened in the past is a moot point. Then why bother?
Okay,
killings are pretty acceptable, so why bother?
Tarique Rahman has indicated that he doesn't want to go down the route of revenge politics. Bearing that in mind, will you make a plea to him to perhaps dismiss some of the charges levied against you and your family?
That is not up to me. I don't live in the country. That is really up to the party. They will decide what they want to do. The BNP is the other large party in Bangladesh. Of course, we should talk to them. I've always said that. The BNP should never have boycotted the elections. Tarique Rahman, well, if he gets elected, I mean, it is a sham election, but yes, if he becomes prime minister, then yes, of course, we will talk to him and deal with him. But
you will work with him? You will work with Tarique Rahman if he becomes prime minister?
I have no interest in working in Bangladeshi politics whatsoever. I'm a
No, not
techie by
necessarily
background.
working in Bangladeshi politics, but you will be open to discussions, talking to Tarique Rahman, trying to build a bit more of an amicable relationships, perhaps, than we've seen in past.
I'm always open to it. I'm not a person who I'm a person who always believes in having a conversation, no matter how difficult or with whom. That is my strategy. That has always been my strategy in life. So,
Mr. Wazid, your family, as well as Tarique Rahman's family, have dominated Bangladeshi politics since the inception of the country in 1971. Many people have criticised that, actually, as a form of dynastic politics. I mean, do you think perhaps it's time we should say goodbye to that?
look, is it dynastic politics because we choose to be in it, or is it because the grassroots keep voting for us in the party council? I mean, that is the question. I mean, look, if I had wanted to be prime minister of Bangladesh, I could have been prime minister a while back. My mother had been pushing me to run for elections, run for office, become an MP for over a decade.
So why didn't you, out of interest then? Why didn't you go to be prime minister?
Because, there are people in life who are, once they're happy with what they have, they don't see, not everyone sees power or even money as, a nonstop. I mean, that's something I've never had a greed for. Even when I've never had a greed for power or money. I'm happy just to be comfortable.
Okay, and how should, in your view, how should the Awami League reform? What does the Awami League of the future look like?
Look, reform, again, is an ongoing process. Over the last 10, 15 years, we have had many younger leaders come up in the Awami League. You've had prominent young leaders who've risen up, become ministers, who were 20 years younger than the previous set. So it's not that you can just replace an entire set with a new one. There's a certain amount of experience that's needed too. So you need a rolling reform is a rolling process. So reforms are ongoing and they will always be ongoing. It's not a one-time process.
Sajid Wazid, thank you very much indeed for your time. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.